Hi. Hello. Good evening. I am Jaketra Bryant, and I am preparing to go live with Source Radio Network with Family Mix Mondays. Yep, you guessed it. It is Monday, and it is time to continue with a great series that I am in the midst of doing. So, shortly, we'll be having a guest in. And so, I'm getting ready to tune in and let you all go get some people and tune in as I start my interview. And so we'll be doing some more with our guests and the series that we've been doing. There's so many great conversations that are needed. Oh my goodness, in the community of parenting. And we're doing just that. We are breaking cycles. We are turning situations around. And we are just really doing it.
Your show is scheduled to start
in get ready for
1 minute 26 seconds. Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please hold and you'll be able to listen.
You probably heard that part, huh? What'd you say?
I said hi. Over my picture, I'm gonna change my picture and put the logo over it.
Okay.
All right.
Can you hear it?
Yes, I can.
Okay. That means I gotta talk during the break too.
Yep.
What part? But this part is not gonna.
No.
Okay.
No, it's not.
It's like this part is gonna be recorded and sent.
No, it won't.
Okay. I messaged Shavonda to see, so hopefully.
Oh, okay.
My big old lot of water.
Blog Talk Radio. Source Nation, join us now for Family Mix Monday with licensed professional counselor Jaketra Bryant. Tune in as Jaketra shows the different dynamics that make up family. Whether you represent the nuclear family, single parent, extended, grandparent, or blended family, Jaketra has tips and advice designed to strengthen your family structure. Source Nation, here is your host, Jaketra Bryant.
Well, good evening, Source Nation. Again, I'm your host, Jaketra Bryant, and I want to welcome you to Family Mix Mondays, which is a show where I strive to break generational cycles and really have the discussions with our parents about topics that we often think about, but we're barely being able to, we barely feel prepared to discuss. And so tonight, I have a guest who's been on before, and I admire her as a mother. I admire her as another Christian woman. I admire her in our field of mental health. And so I think this is going to be really insightful for you. This is going to be one you don't want to miss. It's going to be one that you want to get a pen and a paper for, because she is detailed with resources, and she is loaded with resources on the community of Georgia. I promise. She was like probably part of the construction team. She is so much into resources. And so we're going to continue our series of the power of positive parenting. And so I really hope you enjoyed my guest last week, Diane Lang, who talked about the whole sayings that we used to say, do as I say, not as I do, or because I said so. And so we want to get away from that. We actually want to have good conversations with our children about role modeling. And we want to look at our role when it comes to that. And so have you ever been in a store and the parent is looking mean and the kid is looking mean, and you're wondering man, what's wrong with them? And well, that's kind of what modeling looks like. Modeling has a a funny way of just imitating itself, whether it's good or bad. We can model those behaviors. And so we want to talk about our role as parents and what that looks like when we model something, or we have mental health associated with it, or we have something that was unresolved and baggage, and how that actually in turn affects our children. And so it affects our role as parents when it comes to modeling and how to be more positive and interacting there. And so before my guest joins me, I want to stop and thank our sponsors. And they are Zulina Health and Wellness and Fitness, Paper to Film Productions, Revolution Meals, Renovations, Be My Type Matchmaking, Blend to Blend Juice Bar Boutique, and Urban Vincent Digital, and New Covenant Praise Worship Center. And after the break, I have a guest. Her and I are going to have a great discussion on positive parenting. So join me after the break.
Talk Nation, stay tuned. You're listening live to Family Mix Monday with your host, Jaketra Bryant. Radio Network is just one of the many platforms that is used to fulfill dreams of our listeners and impact the lives of our communities, cities, and the world. It is often said that great things will happen when a group of driven people work together to accomplish one goal. We're giving people the opportunity to have a voice, translate words that haven't been heard, and paint pictures that no one has seen. Talk Radio Network, your life purpose. You listen, blogtalkradio.com/radio.
When I call the reason for your absences throughout the years, please exit the auditorium without your high school diploma. Too tired? Family trip? Sick day? Starting the holidays?
Starting in 6th grade, students who miss 18 days or more of school in a year for any reason will fall behind and risk not graduating high school. How many days of school has your child missed this year? Absences add up. Keep track at statistics.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Army and the Ad Council.
That's been growing between us. I am my Jesus, my God, now forsaken me. I don't even feel connected. Such less protected. But all of this can be corrected with more joy upon my soul.
Welcome back, Fourth Nation. You're listening live to Family Mix Monday with your host, Jaketra Bryant.
Welcome back, Source Nation. Again, you're listening live to Family Mix Monday. Of the Volunteer State Mass Choir. Tune in Saturday at 2:15 for our newest show, Spotlight, with the host, Teresa Hammond, as founder Jeffrey Woodward, Doc, discuss their musical journey. So, Source Nation, before the break, I let you know that I am having a guest on who is so resourceful, who's one of my dear friends that I admire, as well as a person that is so in tune and intentional in the field of mental health and the health of a person. And so this is my dear friend, Shavonda Dykes, and she is the founder and director of Surviving Transitions. She is a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia and national certified counselor through the National Board of Certified Counselors. Additionally, Shavonda is a certified clinical trauma professional and master addiction counselor. She earned an undergrad degree in management from National Louis University and a graduate degree in community counseling from Argosy University. Shavonda previously served as clinical director from core agencies, led lead therapist, case management, and community support staff before opening her own private practice, and working collaboratively with Ms. Heather Connors at Healing Hearts Counseling Center in Douglasville. Additionally, she has worked in both outpatient and inpatient settings. And so before she joins us, me reading does no justice. So I'm gonna let Shavonda come on. So she is here live with us. And Shavonda, go ahead and tell Source Nation more about you and any new things you have going on.
Sure. Thank you for having me. As you stated, I am a licensed therapist. I work with individuals, children, and families. And I enjoy what I do because I believe in helping to keep the family together. And more importantly, I work with parents on parenting issues.
Mm-hmm. Shavonda, pick your phone up off of speaker and just put it on your ear because it's making a lot of feedback.
Okay. Let's try that.
And let's see if that helps with the radio, and if that helps us.
Okay, did they eliminate it?
Yes? Yes, I got a yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So do you want me to
go ahead.
off?
No. It's fine. Stay live. Source Nation, so we're live also. And so just go ahead and tell Source Nation again, about you, any new things you have going on since it cleared up some.
Okay. Again, I am a therapist and work closely with children, their families, parents, caregivers, community leaders, as well as the local school board. And I try to help individuals with parenting challenges and really with the children and their behaviors. Because that's what I've been seeing a lot of for the last 2 years.
Yes. So good. So, we've been on a series of positive parenting and really just talking about the role that a lot of parents can play when it comes to the health of their child and what it looks like for their children. And so talk about some of the mental health impact of a person when they actually have not worked on themselves and what that looks like modeling parenting to a child.
Sure. may have issues
that have not been resolved.
These are behaviors
that they've learned in the home. Oftentimes it comes out in their parenting and it's passed on.
They may yell at a child. They may discipline a child inappropriately. They may not have the patience required to actually model the skills successfully, which in turn allows the child learn maladaptive
behaviors.
This child may go to school and not necessarily understand how to make friends and just sit quietly because this is not something that's modeled in the home. However, parenting is extremely critical and imperative to the child's development because the first teacher is the parent.
Yeah, I agree. When it comes to like the first teacher is the parent, you're right. Like I was talking to our guest last week and I remember talking to her and I was saying to her, like, every time I'm driving in the car, whether I have an attitude at that moment or not, because sometimes I do have an attitude, but at that moment I didn't. And Christian was in the car and I was calm, but the traffic kind of stopped. He was like, what are y'all doing? Why aren't y'all going? Aren't you not being aware that other people around you are like at the light or waiting? And I realized, like, you know, somewhere maybe in a few of my conversations in the car that I may have had, I don't call it road rage because it's a very calm processing type of communication. But where Christian was really like imitating what I had done. And this was like in a car. So imagine like what it looks like if you got some other outrageous attitude with anger happening.
Right. And notice he picked up on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that little one is something else. That's something else. What about like in terms of parents who have mental health issues? I know we talk a lot sometimes about hereditary and traits being passed on. So let's talk like if a parent doesn't even know they may have like bipolar or depression or anxiety or something like that, anything diagnosed, but yet they're displaying different mood changes. Have you seen how the child might get affected and what that might look like in how they behave?
Definitely. Oftentimes
for parents or caregivers that
have mental
have mental health issues that are unaddressed or not
there's a
diagnosed.
strain on the relationship,
parents, child, siblings.
And overall, if that person
is
the patriarch of the family,
is the patriarch of the family, that strain impacts the entire dynamics of the household and the family.
It can branch out into
extended families,
and the child suffers because the child is then placed in the caregiver role and the need to take care of the parent, if you will.
Yeah, I think it's a good point about like taking care of the parents. So I wonder if somewhere in the midst of it, both parties really see that, like, not quite sure what to put their finger on as far as like what they're modeling, but they see that there's some type of like some codependence or some unhealthy behavior happening. So how can parents, with that being said, how can parents actually recognize, well, am I modeling something that is teaching my child how to behave inappropriately at school? Or am I modeling something that's going to teach them later how to have unhealthy relationships? So what do you think about that and how parents can even know?
Okay.
Parents who are simply unaware are those that
it's not necessarily a problem, but when Johnny keeps getting referred sent home, not a problem. That's something we need to examine because, again, if little Johnny is watching shows on TV, if little Johnny is hearing messages that are not fully supportive of him, and the messages may be negative in nature, there's no reinforcement, they simply be unaware. So helping them to understand what those healthy boundaries are. More importantly, to adapt and to treatment.
Unmuted. So we have a caller on the line, Shavonda. So let's grab this caller. So caller with the last four numbers ending in 6962. You are live on Family Mix Mondays. What's your question or comment?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello.
Hi, how you guys doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm just calling to show my support. I didn't really catch anything.
Oh, we thank you. Thank you. Shavonda, you want to say hello to your daughter?
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome. You guys talking about parenting skills, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't have anything yet. I'm not a parent.
Well, keep on definitely listening. Thank you for your support.
You're welcome.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It's so but yeah, like Shavonda, I wanted to make sure that I want to look at like a couple of different factors when it comes to the role that parents often play. Excuse me, when it comes to the role that parents often play with what they model in terms of the mental health and the trauma side. I know your area of specialties is trauma and like a lot of it mental health. And so can you think of a time that like a person's mental health really interfered with how they parent?
Yes, I can.
Yes,
I
I
had a
can.
parent that was
I had a
severely
parent that was
depressed,
severely depressed,
and
and
it resulted in her
it
neglecting her
resulted in her
children.
neglecting her
She
children.
struggled with her
She
depression
struggled with
for
her depression
maybe
for
3 weeks or
maybe
longer.
3 weeks or longer.
Unable
She
to
was
get out of bed,
unable to get out of bed,
unable to shower,
unable to
unable
shower,
to make breakfast.
unable
So
to
she
make
was not able
breakfast.
to meet
So she
her
was not able
daily
to meet her daily
ADLs.
ADLs.
Therefore, she neglected herself and
Therefore,
the
she
children.
neglected herself and the children.
So a family member had to
So
come
a
over
family
and
member had to
actually
come over
take
and
her to the
actually
hospital,
take her to the hospital,
have her triaged,
have her
and help her to
triaged,
get
and help
assistance
her to
because
get
she didn't
assistance
believe
because
she was
she didn't
actually
believe she
depressed.
was
She didn't
actually
believe she was
she didn't
depressed.
believe
Excuse
she
me.
was depressed. Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that makes me think of so many different scenarios. Like I immediately kind of went to like drugs and alcohol usage and that particular community losing their children a lot and not thinking that that's a mental health issue and not thinking that there's a problem and just being like, well, my baby's taken care of. She's fine. She's over my aunt or uncle's house, or there's nothing wrong with me. My child is fine. And so what kind of conversation can maybe outside people have with parents if you're worried about what they're modeling for their children?
It's interesting that you asked that question
That you
because
asked that
sometimes it's
question
as
because
simple as
sometimes
a
it's
dialogue.
simple as a dialogue.
Hey, what are you doing with little
Hey,
Johnny?
Johnny.
Not so much as where he's
Not so
learning it
much
from,
where
but
he's learning
how
it
are you
from,
being
but
the parent
how
to
you being
little
the
Johnny?
parent to
Are
little
you
Johnny?
doing anything in front of
Are
little
you doing
Johnny
anything in
that
front of little Johnny
may
that
not be appropriate?
it may not be appropriate?
And
Mm-hmm.
waiting for that response
And
because
waiting
some
for the
parents will
response
be
because
honest and
some
say,
parents
well,
will be honest and say, well,
maybe I drink in front of little
maybe
Johnny,
I
but
drink
it's
in
one
front of little
drink.
Johnny, but it's one
And
drink.
other parents will say, well,
And other
I
parents
get
will
wasted
say,
in
well,
front of my child
I
and I
get
don't know what
wasted in front of
happens
my
next.
child and I don't know what happens next.
So that's when family gets
So that's
involved
when family
and
gets involved
somebody else
and
has to care for
somebody
little
else
Johnny
has to
during this
care for
time.
little
Or
Johnny during this
like
time,
my
or
previous client
like
with
my
the three
previous
children,
client with the
she didn't
children.
believe she was depressed.
She didn't believe she
So
was
the
depressed.
children were
So
basically
the children
caring
were
for
basically
themselves and trying to
caring
take
for
care of her.
themselves and trying to take care of her.
And again, they
Yeah.
were children.
And again,
So
they
they
were
were
children.
clearly taken
So
out of
they
their
were clearly
element,
taken
but
out of their element,
they didn't know
but
how to care for
they
mom.
didn't know how to
They
care
were
for
making
mom. They
meals
were
and
making
drinking
noodles and
juices,
drinking
trying to
juices,
get ready for
getting up,
school,
trying to
and
get
she
ready
was
for
taking on
school,
the
and again,
role
they were taking on the
of being
role
a parent.
of being a
So
parent.
mom was just
And mom was
struggling with
just
depression.
struggling with depression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so do you think that it's helpful for at this point to get like a therapist involved, or do you think like it would be more helpful for an aunt or uncle or somebody to kind of step in to say things like, hey, I'm worried about like what this might look like for your child later in life? Or do you think that people are even aware of what they do today and how it impacts their child in having a relationship, or how it impacts their child in um, school or their mental state? Like, do you think they're even aware of that?
I think there may be a
disconnect with them being aware.
However, I do believe it's equally
However, I
important
do
to
believe
have
it's
that
equally
family
important to
support
have
system.
that family
So whether
support
that's an
system.
aunt or
So
uncle,
whether that's an
bringing
aunt or
the matter to
uncle,
the forefront and
bringing the
confronting
matter to
them,
the
as
forefront
well
and
as
confronting
professional
them,
help,
as
because
well as professional help,
sometimes
because
you know as well as I
sometimes,
know,
you know, as well as I
individuals can
know,
hear things from family
individuals
members
can
all day
do
long.
things from
They can
family
talk
members all
until
day
they're
long,
blue in the
and they can
face,
talk to
but until they
face,
actually sit down with a
but until they
professional
actually sit
to
down
hear
with a
it from
professional
someone
to
different,
hear it from someone different,
oftentimes they get a different response
oftentimes
or a
they get
different
a different
takeaway.
response or a different takeaway.
So that may motivate some
That may
individuals to
motivate
really
some
be more
individuals to
accepting
really be more
and to really
accepting
examine
and to
what
really
they're
examine what
doing, what they're not
they're
doing, and
doing, what they're not
how they can strengthen
how they
their
can
family dynamics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so much when it comes to this, the role that we play, and the role that we play and the role that um, our mental health and our past plays when it comes to just what mental health, I mean, just what it looks like to parent and model. And so I know for me, I did what is that book called? What to Expect When You're Expecting. And I did a lot of that book. And now I think it really just told me about like my body and what was happening when Christian was inside me, more so than it prepared me for this experience to be a mom. And I think this experience that I've had to be a mom was more so like just me. This experience was more so with me pretty much just, what's this thing doing? Pretty much with just me just trying to do trial and error and trying to balance this whole life and figure out who he is. And I think one of the biggest points I learned about Christian is I learned to observe Christian for who Christian is versus let me go textbook and like and versus let me go textbook and let me really figure out who my child is. And I think that helped me to then model something. And I found that to be very important.
Good.
Mm-hmm. So Siobhan, I was wondering, like, I I was wondering about some particular resources that parents can actually use if they're worried about if something from the past is interfering with how they parent or them having more of a positive interaction. And so is there some particular resources or a way that they can tell that?
Typically, I would encourage parents to again examine their behavior, but if they're not willing to tell, excuse me, if they're not willing to look at the situation and really see it, sometimes there's some impairment there, and sometimes there can be some distorted thinking or some stinking thinking because if a parent was traumatized, they may not necessarily connect the dots, but they may be extremely protective or overprotective. But the parent can also have a conversation with their primary care doctor, family practitioner, or maybe the pediatrician that treats the children. But there are resources available, and I will add those to my website.
Yes. That's good. So I know a lot of people go to things like a parenting class, or or maybe some couples counseling, but I don't think like some people, like in my view, really realize that you can go to a parenting class and that just helps you with some parenting skills, but there is this other level that impacts if it's going to be a positive interaction or if you're recycling something in your family line based on like what particular things you had going on. And so like, are there some really bold type of man, type of signals that says that you may be recycling some generational brokenness in your family as the parent? Do you think there's some things that some parents can look out for and reflect in the mirror with themselves?
Definitely.
Definitely. And I do believe
Disorders
some
are
of the mood
common,
disorders are common,
anxiety,
anxiety,
things that quote
things
unquote
that
we knew
quote
about
unquote we knew
Uncle
about
Sammy
Uncle
wasn't
Sammy
quite
wasn't
right,
quite
but we
right,
begin to see
but we begin to
those
see
traits in
those
children and
traits
other
in
family
children
members,
and other family members.
with the person just
Mm-hmm.
With the person
isolating,
just isolating,
not really talking
not
much,
really talking much,
failing to make eye
failing
contact,
to
and
make
more
eye
importantly,
contact, and more importantly,
appearing irritable with sudden mood swings.
with sudden mood
And
swings,
it may skip
and
a
it
generation, it may
may
not.
skip a
But
generation,
when
it
we
may
notice
not,
these
or
behaviors
we
that
notice
appear to
these
be
behaviors that
maladaptive
appear
are
to be
just
maladaptive
not
are just
appropriate,
not
those are
appropriate,
red flags.
those are red flags.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Unmuted.
Yes. So, um, I was trying to think of like, sorry, I just kind of got stumped about like the whole thing with like the just the red flags and the information there, and so like, would you think that like it's a clear indicator that, well, not a clear indicator, I hate to say it like that, because just looking in the field of like cycles and generational things, we often don't realize we're in a cycle. We often be like, oh, you act just like your mama. Or we may hear people say things like, you know, you're going to be just like your dad, or you're going to be just like your mom. And I don't think a lot of us actually realize like, oh, what does that look like? What does that mean actually? And the impact it has on what happens, and that we're actually in a cycle, not the impact, but necessarily we're in a cycle. And so I brought this question up last week, and I want to bring it up to you again about the comments that people often say, do as I say, not as I do. And so what are your thoughts on those particular things, those comments, those cliche comments when it comes to modeling?
I think we have to be careful when we're modeling and
Careful when you're
using that
following using that
proverb or cliche,
proverb or
do as I
cliche,
say, not as
do
I
as I
do.
say and not as
Because if
I
we're
do.
not modeling
Because
appropriate
if we're not
behavior,
modeling appropriate
and I
behavior,
am
and
doing
I
as you
am
say,
doing as you say,
and I'm also doing what you
and I'm
do,
also doing what you do,
I'm being easily
I'm being
influenced by my parent.
influenced by
So
my
if my
parents.
parent is making
So
bad
if my
choices,
parent is
that
making bad
spills over to
choices,
my
that
life
spills
as
over
a
to my
child.
life as a
So I
child.
learn how
So
to
I learned how
act
to
frequently,
act
which may not be the
may
best
not be
thing, but
the best thing,
my
but
parent solves problems
my parents
by
solve problems
losing
by
his or her temper,
losing her
getting
temper,
frustrated,
getting frustrated,
kicking things, throwing
doing things,
things. And I may
throwing
not do
things,
that in the
and I
home,
may
but
not do that in
I
the
may go
home,
to
but
school, I may
I
go out
may
in the
go to
community,
school, I may
and
go
the
out in the
same
community,
behavior
and the
again
same
is repeating
behavior
itself.
again is repeating itself.
So we have to
Mm-hmm.
be careful with
So we have to be careful with
do as I
do
say, not
as
as I
I
do,
say, not as I do.
if we're not modeling the appropriate behavior constantly. That behavior has to be reinforced with children because
Reinforced with children
the first
because
5 years of their life,
first 5
they
years
learn
of their
from
life,
parents
they
or the
learn from
caregiver.
the parents or the caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't stop
That made
there.
me that made me think of the young lady I had in my office today. She's working at a daycare. And so she was telling me, she was like, I don't want to quit this daycare. This is my field and my major. I think I'm learning so much. I'm finally moving my kids around. She was like, but the management was off. And secondly, she was like, there's this little kid who goes around literally like hitting people. And she said he goes around hitting people. And she said the other day he slung this girl on the ground and got on her and started choking her. And so, like, she started describing some other events. And I was like, whoa, 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 hold it up. I was like, that sounds like a kid that's modeling something that he's seeing. And I was like, when you see a descriptive illustration of something, like something that's very detailed, then that is a big indicator that they are indeed modeling something. And that says a lot about like what might be going on at the home.
Right. It definitely sounds like he is demonstrating something that he's witnessed in the home, via TV. It's somewhere he's learned that. And as disturbing as that sounds, it's very possible that he may do that frequently, and it may be witnessed at school.
Mhm.
So, how do we
So
get
Source
through to
Nation.
those children?
Yep. Serious. It's terrible.
And I also wanted to
So
piggyback on what you mentioned earlier. Someone says, you act just like your mom, you act like so and so, or you look like them, or you're just like them. Sometimes are they referring to that person physically? Do you resemble them, or are they actually speaking about the behavior? Because I may not know so and so was impulsive and appeared angry and irritable and didn't have many friends, but I'm exhibiting the same things.
Unmuted.
I think it's really sad because that young man was like 2, and I understand like the journey of like what this might look like if it keeps going, from maybe misdiagnosed to someone looking at other things. And it's actually maybe a case of a kid who's indeed witnessing maybe some other like abuse in the home. And yet all of a sudden we focus on more of like the kid itself, or the like, and what he's not doing or what his behavior looks like, versus, oh wait, we forgot to look at the role that the parents play and how they interact with one another, or how they don't interact, and what this looks like that this 2-year-old is displaying. And then I can see it getting dismissed as a tantrum versus something to deeper look at what's being modeled. And so how can we prevent that? How can we prevent misdiagnosing people, sending somebody to the wrong type of physician when it indeed is a mirror type of thing? People would need to look in the mirror.
Muted.
I think a lot of that comes from the education, the awareness, and the willing to have the open, honest dialogues about behavior, parenting, and more importantly, discipline. Sometimes if they are misdiagnosed and or they haven't been properly diagnosed, it could look like a lot of different things, and we could have children in treatment when it's really a parenting issue, and the intervention would be to work with the family. But what if I'm a parent and I just don't really see it as a problem? I know my child's behavior is quote unquote off the charts. Not that that's an excuse, but there has to be a balance there. Yet the family involved.
Yeah.
Unmuted.
And so, Source Nation, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Shonda Dyke, licensed counselor. And we are discussing the power of. And so, if you have any questions or comments, tune in. Sorry, Source Nation, I had some difficulties there. But if you are just tuning in and would like to be a part of this discussion or call, please dial 619-924-0933. That's 619-924-0933 and press option 1. And Shavonda and I would be glad to take your questions or calls. And so, Shavonda, you there?
I am.
I'm so sorry. I'm live and that thing is not working in my favor. So I obviously need a technology class. And so, but like, yeah, so like what, like how can we address those type of things and have more positive interactions with our children who go off to daycares and who go off to schools when it's really maybe a domestic situation at home and they're watching it, so that's their normal. So how can neighbors or other people watching that actually step in and be more involved and discuss that impact there?
I believe that if there are issues going on in the home and the child is being impacted by witnessing abuse of any kind, that is detrimental to their development. However, those that are actually part of the child's world, whether that's the teacher, whether that's the daycare worker, the transportation driver, the bus driver, or even the extended family, if they're able to really speak into this child and, for lack of better words, monitor the situation, but feel free to report it, because oftentimes the family needs to, if it's a domestic violence situation, the family needs to just abandon the home, but they may not be fully able to pick up and leave. They may be dependent upon dad's income. They may be quote unquote stuck or feel that they're stuck. However, if it's impacting the child and he or she is not thriving at school, they begin to act out, it's not as easy as picking up and relocating to another state. So if there is a support system, I encourage those individuals who are part of the support system to just really be observant, share that information, even if it's with the mom or whomever is actually being abused, so that they know, one, they have the support, and more importantly, this is what they observe and how it's impacting the child as well as the family.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you mentioned a good point that I was listening to about they can't just up and leave because they're in this situation. And I think like me, I am so big on being a cycle breaker. I'm so big on like breaking some generational things and having conversations. And I think that speaks volumes that like we have this thought process, and I'll say we because I don't know who a particular person would be, but we have this thought process that if I stay for the children, then, it's going to be better because at least they get their family. But I think some of the things that I've seen within the field is not understanding the role you play when you do stay around in something unhealthy and when you are indeed unhealthy yourself, and what that looks like in terms of what you begin to model and how that's not positive. And so, like, what are your views on that? People sticking around and they just in this situation and they're just like, I gotta stay for the kids.
Wow. It sounds like an individual may want to stay for the children, but in reality, they're not really staying for the child or the children because the abuse is continuing and they are unable to vacate and get the child to a safe place. We have a responsibility to ensure that child and family are equally healthy, whole, and well. So some interventions may include making a referral, helping this family to escape and get out of it. But just like children do not come with manuals, parents don't come with manuals either. Domestic violence doesn't come with a manual, and we can't just say, I'm staying for the child when this in fact is being away with the child, and you have a caregiver, a mother, who may be feeling hopeless, and they are actually going through the abuse. So the abuse is not a one person concern. It impacts the mother, the child, the pets as well. They may be something. So as traumatizing as that is, it's not a healthy place to be.
Yep. Nope. No, my goodness. Amen. Amen. I was back here like, oh, amen. Yes, they over here staying at something. Like, you are absolutely right. Like, it is just amazing where the distortion comes in. And I think that's what makes it difficult for parents to actually realize their role And so like for the last part of this, our interview, I definitely want to talk about like how they can turn this all around. And so if they're in something unhealthy, if they are indeed like in a situation that where they have not assessed their own mental well-being or their role, let's get them to a place that they can actually just shine the mirror this week. So Source Nation, I just want to challenge you to shine your mirror this week and just take a look at who you are and your role as you move forward this week to see what are you modeling. So Shavonda, let's help them with that. So what are some basic steps, practical things that some of our Source Nation family and our parents can do to say, wait a minute, like, wait, am I one of those people they're talking about? Do I have some stuff? Like, how can they start with some practical ways of looking at themselves?
I think they can start by behavior and reflecting on what they do regularly in front of the child. Oftentimes, it may not be so obvious. I believe that having structure and routine is key to children's development. However, that having running late to pick the child up, may or may not have time to fix breakfast. The child is basically parenting themselves. However, when we shine that mirror back, are we looking at us and saying, okay, I don't want to point the fingers at me, but I know my child doesn't get up by 8 o'clock. I know my child wakes up later. I know my child cannot ride the bus because I wake up 20 minutes late. I'm rushing to get to work and I'm irritable, I'm yelling, and I just want to put the child out. I don't even want to walk them in, and I know I have to clean it. So when we know better, we do better, but a lot of that has to do with taking accountability and just really, really agreeing to be a better person today that you were on yesterday. So making that conscious effort to say I'm going to do better. One thing that you didn't do on yesterday, today. Did you read to your child? Did you reaffirm them? Did you tell your child I love you? Did you take a moment to actually ask the child, how was your day? Put the phone down and listen for their response.
That's good. I agree. What'd you say?
I said it sounds like a lot to do, but it really isn't.
Well, that's remember you talked about like not having a manual. That's what it looks like. I think sometimes we think there's just like, okay, they're gonna come out like this. All girls look like this, all boys look like this. They're gonna be good and they're gonna listen. They're not gonna like pee in their diaper. I think we have all this illusion about like what it looks like. And again, so many factors when it comes to parenting. That's why you really truly got to be like, am I ready for this? Because there's a lot to bringing somebody into the world and what we're modeling. And so I like the step about putting your phone down. I had to do that too. I started noticing when I was like really fixated on like marriage and really fixated on like finding a husband. And I was like all strolling all those darn dating sites. And I had to realize that like I'm sitting across some Christian at dinner time, but yeah, I'm like really secretly one of my eyes halfway over here and I'm strolling. And what that looked like for what I modeled to him as far as the importance of our time and the importance of who he is. And it's invalidating. And so things just as small as put your cell phone down and be present, that does say a lot about what you're modeling. Yep.
Muted. Unmuted.
So, Siobhan, I was wondering, like, with the particular steps, at what point do parents need to say, oh, this is a little bigger than mine? As I've been doing some of these things, I'm recognizing that there's some baggage coming up. There's some unresolved hurt coming up. At what point do you think that they need to go and maybe seek outside resources like a therapist or life coach or family mediator or parenting classes?
I believe
Muted.
that a parent should definitely help before they start feeling overwhelmed. I believe parenting is a stressor for them, and they struggle with managing their emotions and regulating them, and feeling that the child is quote unquote being off the chain, I feel like they should definitely seek professional help before that situation gets deeper and they feel as though they're sinking and drowning and there's no hope.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unmuted.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good advice with it. So I agree. So any other particular things that you think will be helpful when it comes to the positive modeling of it? And we discussed a lot about like recognizing and when to go get help. And so what about words? How effective do you think words are when it comes to whether we're modeling something positive or we're continuing a generational cycle?
I believe the words are extremely valuable, and more importantly, our language. Whether it's little children, big children, because they pick up on it, they are likely to use the words that they've heard in the home, and it may embarrass them. But again, they've learned it. So even with language, we have to be mindful of the language that we're using. You can't necessarily say bye-bye or do you want the bottle, but talking to the child in a language that they understand. But more importantly, making sure that that child is hearing the language, using the language, and making a note of it that comes from the parent demonstrating that consistently in the home, encouraging the child to use language as well.
Unmuted.
And so you're right with the I know I've heard a lot of people run around here cursing and having all this foul language, and then they like when the child says, they're just like, where do you get that from, or don't say that, and then they're shocked. Like I've never got that. I've never quite understood why they're shocked when their child said a curse word when everything out of their mouth was cursing. And so that's always been something that baffled me. Neither here nor there.
Right. I think it's a shock because it's coming from the child, and it may be a moment when the parent didn't think the child was actually paying attention and listening. Because I've heard children say that word at the library. I've heard it at church, and the parent is shocked. I think there's embarrassment that comes in with that, and oh wow, I know this child didn't just say that.
Mm-hmm.
Unmuted.
I know, it's a shocker or something. And so, Shavonda, before we wrap it up shortly, I want to be able to help them with some resources that before you got on here, I bragged about how you are so helpful when it comes to community resources that I swear you were part of the Construction for Georgia. Because, girl, you know all the resources. But are there particular, just a particular direction that they can go to start if they are that parent that's noticing that, oh my goodness, this is a little bit bigger, this is some baggage? Like, where can they start with the search for resources, or are there some good places of support to go, or organizations or anything for them?
I think one of the resources that I use is the Mental Health Association. There are a lot of tidbits on their website, as well as the National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI. A lot of tidbits on their website. And many of the local county resources have screeners and information that parents can actually access from home, from the comfort of their phone, kind of go down a checklist to see if, one, I need to take more action, and two, I need to see someone.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are really, really helpful. And I think if parents are noticing baggage or things that pop up, I think they need to be totally honest with themselves, because that's a key component in getting help. It's not suppressing it and dismissing it and saying, oh, wow, this happened 10 years ago, I'm fine, but they're having reoccurring thoughts of something, and it impacts their ability to not just parent, but to be healthy, whole, and well. So that's something they have to deal with and not be afraid to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. So, yes. And also, I know this weekend you're speaking somewhere, so tell Source Nation about that, and maybe they can come and grab some continuing education. They can come learn about that and what that looks like. So let them know where can they find you. Let them know like where can they hear you speak, and maybe grab some services if some parents have more questions.
Yes, on Saturday, I will be at the NAMI convention, or the conference, I'm sorry. It's at Mercer University in Atlanta, Georgia. And I will be there on Friday. And there will be a plethora of activities for children. I know on Saturday, multiple workshops during both days. And if someone would like to connect with me, I'm available at www.survivingtransitions.com. And I'm also on Facebook under Surviving Transitions as well.
And Sister Honda, it's been a very informative conversation that I think like I want to, my focus is really just to get some parents to shine the mirror, like go in the mirror and just take the necessary practical steps to looking at what you model and how it actually impacts. And I think for me, I have a lot of college students and I'm getting them way after parenting is finished. But by the time I get them, I'm having to look back at the role that the parents indeed played and the environment played. And so I wanted to highlight the importance of our parents with our children from birth on up. And so I do definitely thank you for definitely joining us and being a part of this series of the power of positive parenting. And I do hope that you come back on another series and just really just continue being a part of this series. So thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jaketra and Source Nation.
Thank you. Thank you. And so Source Nation, our guest, Shavonda Dykes, a licensed professional counselor and a certified clinical trauma professional, so many a host of things, shared a lot of great information with us when it comes to just those practical steps. And I just want to piggyback off of it, not piggyback, but just kind of reiterate it so that you can actually know the importance of having that with your child, from putting the cell phone down to taking a look in your mirror to when to go seek services, to recognizing staying in that relationship does not help the child at all prepare for something healthy like marriage and healthy relationships and friendship. So I do hope that you paid attention to those very detailed things. And so if you want to get in touch with me, I can be followed on Twitter at Jaketra. My website is www.b3mentalperformances.com. And my email is jabryant1913@gmail.com. And I want to stop and thank our sponsors, Zulina Health and Wellness, Paper to Film Productions, Revolution Meals, Renovations, My Urban Grandstand Digital, and New Covenant of Praise Worship Center. And I do thank y'all all for joining me on Family Mix Mondays. Please tune back in as we continue this series on next week.